this is the first of two talks on the collection, and so there are some ideas and some little snapshots of what the collection is about and what is the museum. And both Chris and I have been here for a number of years. It's actually 20 years since I've been the director of the Estorick Collection. So it's very much what it comes from. The CV is very much what we experience and what we feel about the collection. And also at the moment we have the entire collection on display until the 19th of December. And this was it's a fairly special occasion because since we opened in 1998, this is the second time that the entire collection has been on display. We have 122 works in the collection. Normally, we also have a series of long-term loans on display, but the core collection is 122 works. And so it's been a rare occasion to see all of them, and it's very interesting, and it's been very interesting for us again to see how the collection, the works talk to each other, and actually how to display. In fact, this is exactly what we would try to talk this evening, and is to show around what are the thoughts behind the current display. In fact, the Estorick Collection is it's a collection of modern Italian art, but it's not a complete overview and curatorial sort of examples of the works. There actually is was very much the choice of the two collectors, Eric Estorick and Salome de Sau, who together bought the works. Estorick, after this is the collection sort of was put together at the end of the 1940s and the beginning of the 1950s, and after Estorick also became a dealer. So there were lots of changes, and but the main thing is the fact the collection reflects their personality and their choices, which is very interesting. But obviously, from a museum point of view, it is creates some questions and some discussions as well. And also we try to address what the collection is, and also through the series of exhibitions and the various events that we've done in the last 20 years, we try to, in a sense, plug the holes and make sure that everything, we give a full ideas of what Italian art of the 20th century is. One of the most striking elements of our collection is the fact that it's all figurative. It's not that the Estoricks didn't know that what's happened in abstraction in Italy at the time, but it was their choice. And so this is a part of the conversation that we have usually with the exhibitions and in our studies. And this is, as I said, we thought how to display and what to do with the collection in the entire building. And I think I will take you through this evening, and is in a sense is very much is a walk through the galleries, and then Chris will talk about some aspects, and then both of us will pick a painting to talk about it a bit more deeply. And this is gallery one, and probably some of you have already seen the exhibition, or you know our collection. And there's one of the major themes of the collection is definitely Futurism, and some of the works we have, they're definitely iconic and fundamental in the history of Futurism, but also on the first wave of Futurism. And as Chris will talk about this later, but it's also often we've been described as a Futurist gallery, which we are not. This is a part. Some of the works are definitely major and fundamental in the study of Futurism, but it's definitely is only a part of the collection. The other, so we decided to show the Futurism galleries first, and also to highlight all the various elements. And also here we can see the work by Medardo Rosso which is the earliest point in our collection. It was sculpted in 1893, and on the other hand, is the end of our collection is in the 50s, and so this is for the Estoricks. This was a contemporary collection as well. For us, obviously now is much more historical. And in the second display that we wanted to put together was about Mario Sironi. Mario Sironi is started as a futurist, so it belongs in a sense with the other conversation, but also has a major significance in our collection, as it was the first artist that Eric and Salome Estorick collected, and it was the first encounter with Italian art in 1947. So they, by chance, saw some books on futurism, and through a friend of them, they sort of met Sironi, and that started the idea of collecting or acquiring Italian works, and we still have so many drawings, especially the early drawings that Estorick found in the studio when he met Sironi. And I think this has been the subject of many conversations. And but also, it's not only the futurist or Sironi, but also that we have some holdings of metaphysical painting. So it's another aspect of the contemporary to the same period of the futurism, or slightly later, but also as there are special points of the collection, and but also what we wanted to highlight in the display is the special connection that Estorick and had with their various artists. Estorick generally was very much interested in the works of art, but with two in particular, two artists, he had a friendship and a long-standing friendship. Massimo Campigli, who actually we had in some of the writing, there's Estorick went to see him many times, painting and looking the way he sort of scraped. He talks about scraping the canvas. And Zoran Music, who was actually good friends of the Estoricks. They actually visited them when they retired in Barbados, and they stay with them. So they had a very long-term relationship. Also in this photographs, we actually see the sculpture in the window, which is by Giuditta Scalini, who was the wife of Campigli. So it's very much a family affair. And other points of the connections are with Renato Gattuso, with one of the paintings that's it's been in the collection. It has been a painting that's been haunting, in the sense, Estorick for a very long time. I actually tried not to buy, but then decided that he would have to have in his collection. And we have sculptures throughout the galleries. And this here we have the Giacomo Manzù of 1952. And some other special or important elements of the collection is Amedeo Modigliani. Estorick collected or acquired the Modigliani before he started his Italian adventure, but it was probably because it was part of his growing up and knowing modern art, which more from a French point of view. But we can sort of argue that for certain things, Modigliani is very French. And also to finish off this sort of outlining of the various things on the top floor, we do have our collection of paintings, of drawings and etchings by Giorgio Morandi. And also Giorgio Estorick acquired quite a few paintings. Also, because he became a dealer, actually some of them they've been sold, and there are not many. They are not in our collection. But also, as probably people have seen it in the here we have an intervention or a dialogue with the works of Paul Caldwell and his reflection on on the lockdowns, and then we had a talk last week. Also, so this is a, I think it's a, and it's been very interesting for us. Chris will, I don't know, maybe disagree with me, but I said the fact that actually we had a, was quite important to revisit and to see how the collection makes sense and how what it is part of it. As notwithstanding it is only a futurist collection. I will. Chris, shall I stop sharing my?
Yeah, and then I'll.
It's easier said than that. That's it.
Okay, right. Let's see if I can share mine. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. So yeah, firstly, what I'd like to do this evening is just make one or two general points about Futurism and the Estorick Collection specifically. Some of this might sound familiar to anybody who came to my recent gallery talk, so I apologize about that. But stay tuned, because obviously Roberta's got more to say, and there'll also be some hopefully new stuff about Cubism and Futurism sort of in the second part of my own talk tonight. So yeah, just some really basic points, and kind of building on what Roberta said. The first of these is that, yes, the Estorick Collection is undoubtedly best known for its Futurist works, but as those of you who know the collection will be aware, it does, as Roberta was saying, only represent one facet of the collection. To a certain extent, this kind of association has come about, I think, not so much because of the quantity of Futurist works that we have, but the quality. And one of our most iconic pieces, Futurist art, is on your screen at the moment on the left-hand side, Umberto Boccioni's Modern Idol. As the name suggests, Futurism was opposed to tradition, of course, and defined itself in opposition to tradition. But there were many artists working within Italy who were perfectly comfortable with Italy's artistic heritage and actually drew a great deal of inspiration from it. And one of those is Massimo Campilli, and there's a work on the screen again from our collection. And obviously Roberta was just talking about this artist a few moments ago. And he drew a great inspiration from Etruscan art. So there were a number of other painters and sculptors who felt the same way about this as Campilli, and who are also represented at the museum. Modigliani, as you've seen, and also Marino Marini and various others. So although there are, as again Roberta was saying, there are gaps in the collection, as with any private collection, that tension between the sort of the lure of the future and the pull of the past, which was actually, I think, one of the defining themes or features or characteristics of 20th century Italian art, is really nicely represented in the collection and emerges quite clearly, I think, from the works that we show. So that's really the first point, as I say, very, very basic, and really one for the benefit of those who are perhaps learning about the museum for the first time this evening, that we're more than just a Futurist museum, that sort of contradiction in terms, really. My second point is that although Futurism had quite a long life, really, compared to most movements, most avant-garde movements, spanning the years 1909 to 1944. Again, just sort of continuing what Roberta was saying, the early years of the movement, what's known as the heroic phase of Futurism, 1909 to around 1918, is what the collection is strongest in. And the works that we show are very much associated with the pioneering figures who are on your screen at the moment. So these caricatures of them at the top, Marinetti, the founder of the movement, and then from left to right, Giacomo Balla, Umberto Boccioni, Carlo Carrà, Luigi Russolo, and Gino Severini. And I think there are three main reasons why this early phase is the focus of the collection. Firstly, the later phases of the movement, which are known as Second Futurism, were only really starting to be revisited and reappraised and reassessed towards the end of the 1950s. And around that time, the Estericks had really started to move on from their sort of obsession with Italian art. They'd started to investigate the art of other artists and other movements. Secondly, these later works were, of course, created during the fascist era, when a number of the artists belonging to the Futurist movement were, let's say, not always entirely critical of Il Duce, and this, which explains why their work was took some time after the war to be explored and to be reappraised and so on. And this is something that I think would have given Eric Estorick pause for thought if he had been intending or interested in buying any of these works. Those of you who've been to the museum to see the rehang that's on display at the moment may have read in Gallery 2 about how his profound love for the work of Mario Cironi was tested to a certain extent by Cironi's political background and political affiliations. And thirdly, this is a very sort of broad generalization. Futurism's later phases did tend to have a greater abstract geometric focus than the initial period. And again, as Roberta was saying, this isn't really the kind of art that the Estericks kind of warmed to or admired so much. And as again, those of you who are familiar with the collection already will know that their preference was overwhelmingly for figurative art. And this question of stylistic vocabularies brings me on, I suppose, to my final point, really, which is that although the Estorick collection, the Estorick collection's futurist works all come from the movement's early phase, they do reflect quite nicely something that was always true of futurist art, namely the absence of what we might call a house style. This slide, which illustrates a number of the collection's futurist masterpieces, clearly shows how Futurism cannot in any way be considered a school of painting. And this is something that distinguishes it from other avant-garde movements, such as Impressionism, Fauvism, or Abstract Expressionism, which were really completely defined by their formal vocabularies. The Futurists were free to express their excitement about the modern world in whatever way they saw fit. And this really enabled them to remain, I think, sort of quite flexible and experimental, open to new ideas, and stop them really from just repeating themselves and becoming stale. Cubism is often wrongly, in fact, seen to have represented some kind of perfect stylistic fit for Futurism or for futurist ideas. In reality, the work of certain key artists who belong to the movement was never touched by it at all. Giacomo Balla, for instance, and there's a work on your screen from the collection, entirely sort of bypassed Cubism, went straight to abstraction, and actually became a very sort of important pioneering figure in the development of abstraction. And there were actually some major differences between Cubism and Futurism, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. So that's just some reflections, sort of, as I say, building on what Roberta was saying about the Futurist works in the collection. Just some sort of initial, say, very sort of simple reflections on those works. So I'll hand back to you, Roberta, I think.
Thank you. And it's and obviously it's I think lots of things that you were saying, that's actually there are thoughts that have been built up during the during the years, and I think you live with the collection. You're still a part of discovering new things when you study. But also there is the conversation they happen, and I think every rehang, I don't know, you probably felt the same. The rehang, they start making sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly one thing I'd say when you're saying about my thoughts about the rehang, I mean, I don't think the collection's ever looked as good, really. I think I mean, it's I've seen it all together before, but it really does. It looks pretty great, I think, at the moment. And yeah, it's interesting to see it all again and to think about it again, because I think, you know, maybe because we do quite a lot of exhibitions and there's quite a turnover of shows, we sort of maybe lose focus on how special the collection actually is.
Yes, I think I often have said there's sometimes it's part of what we do, and we need to have an exhibition, especially also for to make this museum sustainable and to bring people in, because people don't really tend to sort of revisit the museum the same. But also it is what we have is so much better than some exhibitions. Obviously they bring in some different aspects and different things, but the works we have, and also yes, every time is the same thing when we lend works abroad and you actually, or in another collection, is actually you see the works that we are used to see here in a different context. So you start thinking in a completely way. Also, and is I will connect with my next bit. There's a fact since 2000 and last time we had the collection out was in 2008, which we had also 10 guests pictures to talk with the various artists instead of themes, but also some of our pictures have been conserved and investigated and worked. And I think that for me was very much the time when things started making sense. And and I think is the excitement, if I actually can try to share it again, and is the screen, the excitement we had with the very sort of things that we discovered, they were pretty impressive. And
but just looking at thinking about futurist works again, as I've been doing for this talk, you know, it's although, as I say, they're really early works, it's such a rich collection, and there's so many sort of starting points for thinking about aspects of, I mean, I don't want to focus on futurism, having just said we're not a futurist museum, but
that's clearly what we're doing, because now we'll talk about
even just looking at those works, though, there's so many sort of points that you can start thinking about things, and yeah, it's an incredibly rich collection in that regard.
Also, I think probably through the years, and probably you feel the same, the fact that actually it's very, very diverse, and also the fact that we have certain things and no others actually made us review and make sense of what it is, and also probably looking at the choices of what we don't have also make us understand more what the Estoricks actually were about, and what kind of choices they made. It wasn't just a sort of random, everything was fairly it made sense. And I think it's more and more we look into the collection makes more sense, as you also understand of them as well, or at least we feel we do.
yeah well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we've been spending a lot of time with these works over the years, and even so they still sort of there's always something new to kind of think about with them, and they start you thinking about certain things that, you know, you hadn't really occurred to you, and it's quite surprising after all this time, you know.
Yes, and I think it's one of the things earlier we mentioned the fact that we had lots of conservation and lots of studies. Also, probably we paused and we actually spent some time studying these works, because at least for me, I studied some of these things school or university and later, and then you think you know them as a living, and then you actually keep on discovering things, which is one of the most exciting things. And for me, I always wanted to talk about The Hand of the Violinist by Giacomo Balla, because it was one of those works that actually you think, you know, I thought I knew about it, and that actually it was the best surprise that my art historian career. In fact, it's Giacomo, this painting, which is probably one of the most famous early futurist paintings, so very much iconic because it represents all the various aspects of what is some of the aspects of the futurist movement. Is obviously is painted in the more traditional divisionist style, which is actually Balla was very much as one of the major masters, and but also divisionism came from pointillism, but instead of the French version, which is only describes the with dots. Is Balla uses little dashes, makes everything much more vibrant and gives even more the idea of the movement. And also is the technique is covers also the aspects of also photography. There were lots of discussions about the futurists, about how photography, how fundamental photography was, and Boccioni disagreed with Balla about it, but it's still very much part of the research and the way of looking. And so the cut, part of the obviously the cut of the frame, which makes it much more focusing on the subject of the painting, as well as the movement of the arm, which was part of the experience of the chromo photography by Bragaglia, of the Bragaglia brothers. So in that sense, this is a very interesting pictures, but also this pictures also reflects a very specific points of Balla. Balla went to Dusseldorf for a commission by Arthur Lowenstein, and he was a German lawyer and also an amateur violinist. And during his staying there, he did this painting. But the story is much more interesting and complicated. The commission came about from the wife of Arthur Lowenstein, who was Gretel, and as she was one of pupils of Balla's pupil in Rome, and so she returned to Germany and commissioned the painting the commission to Balla to decorate a study in their house. So Balla went there and he worked on the study, and also there is a lot of the conversation, or lots of the letters from Balla to the family describing his stays in Dusseldorf, and is so this is very, we know about this. He hoped that Balla described this painting in one of his letters, and he talks about he hopes that the family will buy it, but that actually didn't happen. In fact, Balla then displayed this picture in 1913 at an exhibition in Rome with the other futurists. Actually, it was the first exhibition that Bragaglia showed with the other futurists, with the five futurists. In fact, in the first futurist exhibition in Paris and in Europe in 1912, Balla wasn't with them yet. And this image also displays the fact that it was painted in Germany. Also, the fact Balla did study the Jugendstil and the sort of more northern lines, and so it is a mixture of various experience, and it's very interesting. But in 2015, we started working on the pictures. We did a campaign of research and conservation, and probably some may have been come to see the exhibition Mode Meets the Eye, which actually published the various results. But is one of the first things that we did as part of was to see the painting without the frame, and this is one of the very interesting aspects, because this is with the frame and without, and immediately one can see that the conception in Balla was already very much with this kind of frame, but he readjusted, and we can see in the line. Maybe I can do it. This is in the lines. The fact that actually he was trying to adjust the angles, which he did much better than with the frame itself, and is and this is quite impressive, the difference with having it to see it without the frame. The frame is actually how much sharper and everything in position is. And the other interesting thing is the fact is it is painted completely to the edges so despite it was thought the frame is actually the painting is painted up to the edge and with it. And but the most interesting part is the fact when we start doing the reflectography and the X-ray, we discover another world behind it. And I always talk about this. Chris will laugh. I always talk about that the moment when we get sent, because they didn't have the results straight away. We got sent the slide on the computer, and actually we could see it, and it was very exciting, in spite because the relationship, and as I talked about the relation between the technicians and the researcher and the scientists that actually could do all these things, and the art historian actually basically looks at pictures and makes them make sense. In fact, because of the most, as I was saying, I was talking about the drawings as well, but because we, when we looked at this, we could actually see that this was fitted very much with this lost study of the Lowenstein so there's actually completely made sense the fact that Giacomo Balla painted the picture, and this probably was either a missing picture that we could actually maybe was this, or but it's definitely part of the decoration. The house where the decoration was done disappeared, or it was destroyed. And these are some photographs which were published in the 1960s, but unfortunately we've never been able to trace the origins of where they come from. They are just in one book. But it is very exciting. In fact, this is definitely, there's a landscape. This is fits very much with the landscape of Dusseldorf. So you can see from the point of view, and then also Balla was very interesting and looking also through the window, and he had lots of other pictures of is looking outside when he was staying in Dusseldorf. And it's also it is obviously still puzzling how maybe this was a part of the freeze that was done for the study that didn't come in, or maybe it was a trial or didn't work. But it's actually so Balla did paint definitely the scene, but then soon after sort of went on and then painted again, because we know that the hand of the violinist was painted still when he was still there. And the other interesting things is the fact that actually you can see the drawings and the various pentimenti in the sense. So it's changed slightly the probably the fireplace that was behind. We can see certain things, and the round of the violin, as the position has changed slightly. And also is a different technique that is painted with pencils and they sort of draw it with pencils. Some of them are done definitely with a sharp line, with a metal ruler, and others they're much more the pencil. And it is quite extraordinary, and it's always very frustrating, and it's not to be able to show this all the time. and there's no way you can actually see it, but it's the life, and then it tallies with all the other bits of the paintings. And the other things is actually there is always the stories, and I think we are very lucky that most of our works they have a story behind. So it's not only the story of the collection when it's actually was bought, but also when they're created. In fact, this painting that was Balla brought it back to Italy with him, and after showing it in Rome, was probably given as a gift to Marchesa Luisa Casati. She was a living work of art. She was talks herself, referring herself to that. She was a muse and a very flamboyant lady, friend with many artists, and she lived in Italy, and then in France, and then in London. And she was she had a very great collection. She had a friendship with all the artists, and also was she then was completely bankrupt because it was living above her means, and she sold most of his works in an auction in 1939. And for a very long time, we thought that would be when the work was sold, and probably was going to be bought by Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, and because he bought lots of works from her, and so we always, for a long time, until we did many more research, we thought that was the case. And then as the wife of Marinetti sold it to Eric Estorick, like she did other paintings. Actually, when we did some research into the purchase by Estorick by from Alex Lefebvre in 1954, we discovered actually that the person that was sold was Morea Hastings, who was the granddaughter of Marchesa Casati. So it's even nicer story, the fact that actually she, out of selling most of her possessions, she kept this painting, and she moved to London, and she died penniless, and also she kept the Balla and passed it on to her daughter, despite they didn't have a very great relationship, and then to the granddaughter, and until Estorick bought it. And the extraordinary thing is actually he met the daughter of Casati, and but I didn't know that she had that painting, and he mentioned in his memoirs that he would actually probably would have been much more excited and would have asked her for the paintings. But at the end of the story, he actually spotted on a shop window in London. So it is very interesting story, and one of the pictures they actually have it's a life behind the surface as well. And I think I'm probably talking already too much. I'll let Chris talk about his painting.
Okay, let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, so yeah, the picture that I'd like to talk about, or rather sort of take as a starting point for considering some of the differences between Cubism and Futurism that I was mentioned earlier, is this one, which is one of my personal favorites in the collection, A Still Life by the Futurist painter Odengo Sofici. Now, you'd be forgiven for asking how on earth could any self-respecting futurist take the still life as his or her subject. Surely it's diametrically opposed to the futurist aesthetic in every way, with its focus on speed and movement. and dynamism and so on. And in actual fact, certain members of the movement, such as Gerardo Datturi, did attack the genre, claiming incorrectly, as a matter of fact, and I quote, "The still life is a foreign concept imported into Italy in the 17th century. This genre of painting cannot be considered Italian. Italy is a land of light and sun, of colour and warmth, a country, in short, where living nature triumphs." Living nature as opposed to natura morta, or dead nature, which of course is the Italian term for still life. And the genre came under attack again in the 1940s by the Futurist painters Ambrosi and Di Bosso in their book Heroes, Machines, Wings Against Still Lifes. As you can see here on the left, Ambrosi really sort of holds the still life up to ridicule in one of his images, presenting it as, well, boring and kind of sad compared to the exciting subjects offered by the modern world. So coming back to Sofici, how can we explain this image? Well, in a sense, very easily, because although it was painted by an artist affiliated with the Futurist movement, although it was exhibited in one of the movement's exhibitions in 1913, and was actually bought by Marinetti, the founder of Futurism, it's actually not really a Futurist painting at all. It's a Cubist painting. As the title of the work suggests, Deconstruction of the Planes of a Lamp, Sofici sort of dismantles the lamp and the glass standing next to it and sort of reassembles it, showing it to us from different perspectives and different viewpoints. In what's really a kind of a textbook demonstration of the Cubist technique. And of course, the muted color scheme of the work is also quintessentially Cubist as well. And all of this isn't really surprising because Sofici was particularly well informed about Cubism and the work of Picasso and Braque, and was actually friends with these artists. When he painted this image, Sofici was sort of really still teetering on the brink of Futurism, really. He didn't fully plunge into it until 1913. And with the sort of the zeal of the convert, I suppose, he would actually go on to write essays denying that still life imagery had any place at all in the Futurist artist repertoire. So, all things considered, it seems like an open and shut case. There was no such thing as Futurist still life. And yet, it's not quite that easy, because one of the most famous Futurist works of all was a still life. Umberto Boccioni's really sort of masterful development of a bottle in space of 1913. So clearly there was disagreement in the Futurist ranks about this subject. So how did Boccioni justify his interest in it? Well, it's partly to do with the Futurist theory of universal dynamism, according to which everything in the world, everything in the universe is constantly in motion, thanks to what Marinetti called the crowds of massed molecules and whirling electrons in everything around us. So considered in this light, many artists, not just Boccioni in fact, felt that the genre of the still life was perfectly valid sort of vehicle for the expression of Futurist theory and Futurist principles. According to them, whereas Cubists restricted themselves to gathering information about the external features of an object, its volumes or its textures or its external aspects, Futurist painters and sculptors should really aim to sort of penetrate into the heart of the object and give expression to the latent energy of matter, which was, a completely different approach. And to sort of put it in anthropomorphic terms, I suppose, you could say that the Futurists were more interested in the personality of the object rather than its external appearance. So for me, Sofici's image is really fascinating one, and it's a good starting point to think not only about the differences between Cubism and Futurism, but also to think about all of the different sort of interpretations of Futurist theory that existed within the movement itself. So it's always been a really, I say, one of the richest works for me in the collection, because it occupies this kind of interesting transitional phase in the Futurist movement and in Sofici's career, when he was, as I say, coming from a sort of a Cubist background, but taking part in Futurist events, but not yet fully fledged as a Futurist. So kind of on the cusp of two sort of worlds, really. And so, yeah, I think it's a fascinating painting, as well as a very beautiful one. So that's my sort of short reflections again on one of the pieces in the collection. I'll stop the share now.
Also, maybe we should also say during the campaign of discovering studying the works, a part of being looking after, also we discovered that Sofici has painted on the back previously. This is a second-hand board. It actually was a painting, and I think it also on display, has been on display on both sides for a very long time, but now we have it on display with a photograph of the back as well, which is also being upside down, maybe in that sense.
And from an even earlier period, isn't it? So it's,
yes, absolutely.
Like, yeah. So I mean, there's lots of things going on in that picture. Yeah.
And it's I think it's probably we are already at the end of our time. I would like to thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody. And we also have another few events, some online. We have part 2 of with Chris and myself on the 9th of December on Zoom. Also, there are a couple of workshops on the 22nd of November and the 6th on December, one online and one on in person. And you can see all the details on our website. And obviously, if we try and we continue to do some talks on for free, because also the access to the museum might be more difficult at the moment, but obviously we appreciate any donation for the museum, and we hope there will be pleasure for people to join as a member, and also through our website we have the shop online where you can buy various catalogs and things, as well as the shop here, of course. And my final thing is that the exhibition in January, when we reopen, we will be closed from the 20th of December until the 13th of January. Then we will open with an exhibition on the works of Bice Lazzari, modern pioneer. She's a woman artist in abstraction, and she worked from the 30s up to the 80s. And thank you very much. We will look if there are any questions. Please ask us. Otherwise, a question from Mr. Adams. Could you please repeat how the Futurist names the idea that everything? Sorry, I can't see the thing. Everything is in. Oh, you can see it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, they refer to it as universal dynamism, and yeah, well, Bergson. Well, Boccioni was very influenced by Bergson.
There's many others. But...
Yeah, his whole problem with Cubism in general was that it was analytical, and obviously Bergson didn't think that analysis was the best way to understand something. It had to be through intuition. So Boccioni was perfectly in agreement with him on that. But yeah, the name for the term was universal dynamism for this sort of concept that everything is in motion, not just aeroplanes and cars, but books and bottles and everything.
Thank you, everybody. We have a lot of thank yous, and it's I think it's that we can we'll see you hopefully very soon, and please do come and see the exhibition as well. I think it's very important to see the works of art in real, for real, not only on the screen. Thank you very much.